All right. So, little bit about me, just so you guys know. I am the extension agent here in the county. So if you ever have questions about any of the stock show stuff, anything like that, I can answer your questions or I can find somebody that knows. Okay. When I was growing up, I showed hogs. So that's why I got to do the hogs for the Livestock Knowledge series. Some things have changed since I showed, but not a whole lot. So we're going to kind of go through this little bit by little bit. Okay. And it is a lot of information. So kind of some general things that I wanted to make sure we all kind of understood were the cuts of meat that come from our pigs. So when you show showmanship, you might be asked questions like that. So knowing kind of where each cut of meat comes from is really good practice. Okay. In general, you can kind of just break it down by the ham, the loin, and the side and the belly. And then a lot of the times they just say this is the shoulder. Okay. And then over here, I have kind of just different cuts of meat that you can actually get from each piece. So shoulder, we don't get a whole lot from, just because if you think about your pig, there's not a lot of muscle right there. So a lot of the times it's ground up into sausage. There's the Boston butt and those blade steaks. Okay. The leg and the ham, that's where we get the big ham piece, because we like to say we like pigs with big butts because you like a lot of ham. Okay. The loin is where kind of all the good stuff comes from. So you've got pork chops, the ribs, some of the Canadian bacon comes from there. And they kind of just how they cut things could be different cuts of meat. So like this crown roast and the rib roast, just depending on what pieces they cut off, can be the same thing. Okay. And then the side, that's where you get your spare ribs, the bacon, the pork belly, and then they just grind up the rest to be ground pork.
Hey, Cheyenne.
Yeah.
We're only seeing just the first, like, are you going through the slideshow? Because all it's showing on our screen is just that first slide, the black slide. Are
Oh,
you like
just the
moving
black
through them?
side?
Yeah,
Oh,
all I can,
sure.
I mean, on the side, I see them, but we can't control that. So we're not
Okay.
able to like
Okay.
scroll through
Let
it.
me share a different screen then.
Okay.
I want that one. I just clicked the wrong one to share.
Oh, perfect. Now we
Okay.
see it.
See that one? Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep. Thanks for letting me know. Okay. So kind of so you guys can see that the ham, the loin, the side belly, and the shoulder. And then here's all of the cuts of meat that you can actually get from each piece. Okay. And I'll send this one to you. So don't think like you have to memorize it all. Okay. So this is kind of more the outside of the pig. So these are really good to know when you're looking for a pig. So you know different things to look out for. Okay. Some of the key things I'm going to kind of point out. You want to make sure you always look at their legs, and we're going to go into that. I've got some really good pictures to show you. You want to pay attention to the ham and then their back. Okay. And that'll make sense here in a little bit. Okay. So when we decide we want to go out and show a hog that we're going to buy one, you want to make sure you get a hog for the right show. So UBJLS is kind of weird since we're in June. So sometimes a lot of the breeders don't actually have hogs for our shows just because they're breeding for August. Okay. So our shows, we want to make sure it's a hog that's born about November. They want to be 6 months about the time of our show. If you're going to do some of the other shows like the state fair, you're going to want it born about February. So it can be 6 months. Okay. You want to have a good price in mind, just because you can buy a pig for like $200 or $5,000. So having that price in mind, really good idea. I don't think you really need to have super, super expensive hogs. As long as you are working with them and feeding them right, you can get them to be kind of top of class also. Okay. When it comes to choosing the hog, you want to make sure you know the history of the parents. And I say that because when we get our pigs, they're so small that sometimes it's hard to see what the potential is going to be. But if you know what the potential is going to be for or what the potential was for those parents, you can kind of guess what your pig is going to be. Okay. You can kind of check their rate of gain, the frame, the soundness of them. The biggest thing you want to check is if those parents have the stress gene or not. So pigs with the stress gene, it can be fatal. I did actually end up with a pig when I was showing that had the stress gene. And it was really frustrating because anytime I went to like work with that pig or in the show ring with that pig, it would start to turn purple. And that's when you want to back off so they don't die because their heart rate, they get stressed out, their heart rate goes really crazy, and they could actually have a heart attack. Okay. So make sure you can ask if those parents have that stress gene or not. And both parents have to have the stress gene for it to actually pass down. Okay. And sometimes you just end up with a pig with the stress gene and you just work with it. Okay. Some of the other things, and we're going to kind of go more in depth of these. The body volume, you can kind of guess the gain ability with it by measuring the length, width, and depth, and then multiply them all together. And that's supposed to be able to tell you how much they can actually put on. Okay, the structure, we're going to go into more depth because I think the structure is one of the biggest things. Because if it's got a bad structure when it's little, it's just going to get worse as it gets bigger. Okay, and then serious faults, I kind of jumped ahead. That stress gene, kind of the structure, they're going to get worse as we go on. Okay. So this is really good pictures to show you kind of things that judges look for in hogs. And you want to look for these in your hog the whole entire time that you have it. When you're working with them, when you get closer to the show, so you know the good parts of it. So when you're in the show ring, you can show off the good parts of it. Okay. So luckily these are all numbered so we can see kind of what they're talking about. So you kind of want that turn of the ham to be kind of rounded. Lots of people joke you like pigs with big butts. Okay. So perfect round butt. So they have more of a ham. The top right here is that loin. You want it to have a full look to it. Some pigs you'll see have little divots right here. You don't want that. You want it to be full looking. Okay. The next is right up here on the forearm. So the width of the forearm, if they have really, really tiny, skinny legs, doesn't look very good and not very structurally sound. Okay. Up here on the top, it's kind of that whole back piece. They call it muscle expression from the blade to the top. A lot of the times they just like that perfect straight line. Some pigs you'll see kind of bow right here in the back. You don't want that. You want it to be as straight as possible. Okay. The fifth thing is the bone size, and you can kind of just gauge that by looking at their legs. And then you want the sixth thing, the depth of the spring of the rib. So you want them to be pretty thick throughout. I kind of say you want your pig to look like a tank. Okay. You want it to be big and stout, but you don't want it to be overly fat. Okay. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. This is kind of a different view for you to kind of see the back of the pig. So up here on the shoulders, you want it to be wide. Then you come back to the loin. You want it to get a little bit skinnier than the shoulders. And then you want it to start getting bigger again at the hips. And then get bigger down on their butt. And then 5, you kind of want their width of their base to look very stable and kind of even. So notice how this pig's legs come kind of perfectly down straight. You want that just because they're very stout and it's going to be easier for them when they go and actually walk through the show ring. Okay, when it comes to finish, so this is what you want right before the show. Okay, so sometimes they'll say in the show ring, the judge will say like it doesn't have enough finish, or it didn't get finished, or it's gone past its time. So these key things, these 5 things are the things that they are looking at when they talk about finish. So when a pig starts to gain weight, it's usually going to gain weight in this elbow pocket first, once they get to the point where they're too big. So you'll kind of notice it starts to get really flabby right there behind those front legs. At that point, you want to kind of slow them down on the feed and start working them out a little bit more. Okay. Same thing up here on the top. You want it to fill in. Remember, we don't want that divot. Okay. So once it fills in, we're good. You can kind of work it out too if it's not good enough. The third thing, if their belly gets too big and starts to look like it's getting lower and lower to the ground, we don't like that at all. Okay. You want it to kind of be a tight belly. The fourth thing is the jowl. So they kind of get more chins going on. You want it to look kind of full, but you don't want it to be extra full. Okay. And then the last is that top of that blade right here. They kind of get another divot right there if they're not finished enough. Okay. This is what we mean when we talk about good structure. So right here, you can kind of see this is the bone structure itself. Would be way easier if we could see the bone structure of a pig. Okay. But you can see it's kind of stacked back and forth like a zigzag shape. The front kind of makes angles as it goes down. Bad conformation doesn't do that. Okay. So what we actually see are these. So normal, this is what we want on the ends. They're kind of walking on their toes, but not like straight on the very tops of their tippy toes. Okay. And then they're not walking very flat footed, because you can see this one is very flat footed. That is very painful for the pigs, and we don't want that. Okay. You can see these ones are walking way too high. That leg is way too straight. And this one's kind of in between, not being perfect where we want it, but not being too low, like it's walking on the whole part of its bottom of its leg. Okay. When it comes to the side view of the front leg, okay, still kind of walking on the tops of their toes. You don't want them walking flat footed, but you don't want them on their tippy toes. Okay. So pay attention to their legs, because they will get worse as it goes on. Okay. And then I just wanted to show you guys this. It's a really good balanced pig that you can kind of see lots of straight lines. You can kind of check out the muscles. You can see the muscle definition. The jowl right here, not too big, not too small. So this is kind of what our goal is. Okay. All right. As far as things that you need, so you can get as fancy with it as you want or as basic as you want. Okay. Some people like different things as far as tools to like move their pig around. Most commonly right now, they're using a whip. Some people still go with a slapper. I still see some people showing with a cane or a stick. Okay, just kind of goes on preference. The whip kind of shows more control just because it's smaller, but it can show a lot of marks on your pig if you're hitting it too hard. Okay, you want to make sure you have a brush. You want a brush that has, if you can see on this one, this clip that hooks on the back pocket. You always want to make sure you have a brush, especially when you go in the show ring. Okay. A spray bottle is really nice, especially kind of when it comes to show day. It distracts the pigs. So if you're stuck in the holding pen, you can kind of distract the pig with your sprayer. Luckily for us, our show's in June, so it's not too hot yet. If you're doing like the state fair, I would say for sure have a spray bottle. You can do just a cheap squirt bottle that you can get from the dollar store, or you can get like these ones that they pump up and pressurize. These ones are really nice. Okay. A feed pan, you can go fancy that hooks onto the side of the pen if you want. Sometimes those don't always work with the pens. I like the rubber pan that you can just put on the ground and you don't have to worry about having to hook it up to anything. Okay. You're going to want shampoo and conditioner. So you can go the cheapest stuff that you can get at Walmart. You want to actually have moisturizing. That's a bonus for our pigs. Or you can get super fancy and go to any of the like supply stores, and they've got whitening shampoo, shampoo with oil in them, different things like that. You can do that if you want to, but you don't have to. Okay. We want to have conditioner just because our pig's hair gets really coarse and it helps kind of calm it down. You want to brush the hair to kind of keep it laying down and looking good. And then you want a waterer. These waterers, you can buy them already made, or you can just buy a big PVC pipe and drill a hole in the bottom and twist in one of these nozzles and then put a cap on the top and you're good to go. I do have the stuff that I'll send you after is a link that actually shows you how to go through and make those. Okay. All right. When you get your pig, if you didn't know, pigs are very susceptible to respiratory issues. So we want to make sure, especially because when we get them, it's cold all the time. So you want to keep them warm, dry, and clean. Okay. Those three things are going to be your best chance of keeping them from getting any respiratory issues. You can use heat lamps, straw, all the things to keep them warm. Make sure that there's no snow getting in with them. They're not spilling water everywhere that's going to get their bedding really wet. And then try and keep it cleaned out the best that you can. Okay. In general, when it comes to your pig, when they get bigger and starting out too, you want to have clean water always. Keep it as fresh as you can, just so it's not stagnant and holding bacteria. And then you want to make sure you always have shade. Okay. Biggest thing with pigs is they sunburn. And so you want to make sure you have shade so they don't sunburn as much. If there's times of the day that they're not going to have shade all of the time and they're probably going to sunburn, you can actually rub sunscreen on your pigs. Just don't get it in their eyes. Okay. When it comes to kinds of feed, so there's two different main types of feed for pigs. So we have a starter feed and we have a finisher feed. Okay. And our starter feed will get the pig more calories, help them grow faster, more protein. And then the finisher helps them put on more muscle. Okay. Kind of the general rule that we use is if your pig is under 100 pounds, you want to use a starter. And if it's over 100 pounds, that's when you're going to switch to your finisher. Okay. If you end up like running out of starter before they're 100 pounds and you don't want to buy a whole nother bag of starter, you can switch over to the finisher. It's fine. That's just kind of our general rule that we stick with. Okay. When it comes to actually feeding, easiest thing to do, and so your pigs gain the most weight, is to have a self feeder. Okay. That's what this picture is. And it allows the hog to eat whenever they're hungry. They just go in, they lift it up. As long as there's food in there, they can eat. And this will help them gain the most weight that they can. When you want to switch to hand feeding is if they're growing too fast or when they're starting to put fat in that jowl area in that elbow pocket. Okay. Then you can switch them over to hand feeding. When you do hand feeding, you want to do it on a regular schedule and you can feed them 2 to 3 times a day. Most of the time it works out way easier for us to just do 2 times because we have school. So morning and evening. And then you're going to split up their feed throughout the day. And that's what I actually have on this slide. So our general rule for how much we want to feed. Okay. So we have 3 pounds of feed that produces 1 pound of gain on a pig. So they have to eat 3 pounds to gain a pound. Typically, hogs will gain 2 pounds a day. So how much feed do you guys think with that information are we going to give a hog to gain 2 pounds a day?
6 pounds of feed.
Okay, perfect. So you're going to split that up over the 2 meals. So 3 pounds in the morning, 3 pounds in the evening, and they should If everything is correct, gain 2 pounds a day. Okay. Sometimes pigs can gain up to 3 pounds. Sometimes they don't. It kind of just depends on the weather and what's going on. So ideally, we want to stick to about that 2 pounds a day. Okay. When it comes to exercise, so you want to start exercising your pig at least 2 months before the show. Okay. You want to walk about half a mile 3 times a week, and then increase it if your hog is getting fat. It needs to be trimmed down. Okay. If your pig is pretty close, like you don't know if it's going to make weight or not, I wouldn't exercise them as much because that can kind of burn off their calories. Okay. When you start getting closer to the show, if you didn't know, hogs don't sweat. So we want to make sure we're exercising them in the cool parts of the day. So early morning, if you want to wake up before school, work them out, or in late afternoon when the sun's kind of starting to go down and it's not as hot. Okay. When you're exercising them, I wouldn't use your show stick just because you don't want to get it dirty. But you can use a bat, a slapper, a cane, something that's a little more stiff to start getting them working on turning. Okay. And use gentle taps. You don't want to hit them too hard because it leaves marks. Okay. We're not abusing the pig. We're just trying to teach it how to go the different directions. Okay. So when it comes to training, this video that I have here is a really good video. I'm not going to show you guys the whole video just because you can watch it on your own time, but I'll click play on it as I kind of talk. Turn off the sound on it if it's going to work. Okay, so when it comes to training, you want to move them forward by tapping them on their side. Okay, you want to hit just underneath their chin so they keep their heads up. So if you notice those boys kind of hitting perfectly right under their chin to keep their heads up. Okay, to make a left turn, you're going to put pressure on the right side. To make a right turn, you want to put pressure on their left side. And then drive the hog at least once a day for the last 15 to 20 days. So right before the show, so they kind of get used to that. When you're doing that, I kind of already mentioned this, you want to study the hog from every angle that you can, so you know what parts of your hog look the best. So when it comes to being in the show ring with the judge, you can show off those angles that look really good, okay? And you can kind of see these boys are using him as a judge, so they always keep that pig in between them and the judge so the judge can always see it. Okay, as far as health of our pigs, so if our pigs get sick, these are kind of the things that start to happen. So they'll stop to eat or they'll stop eating. They could get diarrhea. Sometimes they just have really wet poop anyway, but when it's consistent all of the time, that's when you might want to start checking things out. If they stop drinking water, if they start laying down and staying by themselves, that's kind of not normal behavior for a pig. If they start coughing a lot, you really want to pay attention because they do have those respiratory issues. And if there's anything else that's abnormal, you want to pay attention to that, okay? Easiest thing to do, just because they go to school for it, is to contact a vet. There are lots of people in our community that know a lot about hogs, way more than I do too, and you can ask them. Just kind of figuring out what's going on with your hog, if we need to give them antibiotics, if they have worms, different things, so we can get them gaining the most weight that we can, okay? If it comes down to the point where you have to give your pig a shot, okay? Some people freak out about this. Some people love it, okay? Most of our injections that we give a pig are what we call intermuscular. So it's going to go straight into the muscle. Some other species like sheep, you want to do it just under the skin, which is a little bit more difficult, okay? So when we do it with the pigs, you can see this little target right here. That's where we want to give our injections. We don't really want to give them anywhere else. You just want it right in the neck, kind of above their ear. Why do you think that's where we give that injection?
Because it has the most fat.
Okay, perfect. And then there's not a lot of muscle right there that we eat, right? Okay, so we want to try and avoid the muscles that we're going to eat, because if you give an injection into a muscle, sometimes it'll discolor it and you'll always see that. Okay, so neck is the perfect spot for it. When it comes to giving that shot, we want to make sure that we are giving something to our people that are going to buy it that they can eat safely. Okay, that's what we do in the stock show world, is we are producing safe products for the end producer. Okay, so all of our medications have what we call a withdrawal period, and that withdrawal period is the time that it takes for that medication to get out of the system of the pig or cow or whatever you're giving. Okay, so I didn't give you the whole list of this ivermectin, but sometimes the bottle will say, sometimes it won't, but always inside, when you open the box, there's always that big, huge white packet of all the information. It will always have that in there, okay? A lot of the times it lists it as a residue warning, and you can see it starts out, do not treat cattle within 35 days of slaughter. So cows on this one are 35 days. But if we come down here, it says do not treat swine within 18 days of slaughter. Okay, so 18 days before the show is the last day that you could ever give your pig a shot of ivermectin. Okay, that way, when they go to slaughter the pig and turn it into meat and give it to the buyer, it's safe for them to eat. Okay, when it comes to grooming, you can get super fancy with it. You don't have to get fancy with it. Just kind of depends. Some pigs have more hair than others, so you just kind of have to play it by ear, but here's kind of our general things. So I already mentioned pigs can sunburn. So you want to make sure they have shade, apply the sunscreen, especially the white areas. So sometimes we'll show up to the show and there's lots of kids with pigs that have scabs all over the pigs. It's really scaly and gross, kind of like when your sunburn peels. That doesn't look very good, okay? So make sure your pig has pretty clean skin, okay? You want to wash your hog during warm weather days. So I wouldn't start washing them till all the snow disappears, okay? But you want to do it at least 2 weeks before the show and kind of start working off all of that dirt. You want to use a mild soap and water, and you want to use a brush to kind of scrub it off and pay special attention to their ears. So you don't want to like spray water straight in their ears. You want to make sure you clean their feet and don't get soap in their eyes, okay? When you groom them, you want to kind of brush them in the way that the hair lies down. You don't want to do it against the hair. You want to kind of go in the same direction. Use a stiff brush to start with, and then switch to a softer brush when you start doing the final grooming. If you want to have kind of a glossy look to your hair, you can use a small amount of oil. You want to make sure it's transparent. When I got to show, we got to use lots of glitter and it was fun. They don't like that anymore. Okay. So if you do end up using oil, make sure you rub it in really good and then kind of take a rag, make sure it's not soaping wet with oil. And if you touch it with your bare hand, it doesn't come off on your hand. Okay. You don't want that judge to walk by and touch your pig and then have them have a nice greasy hand. Okay. You can use a powder if you want to kind of make your pig look more white. This one's not used as much just because powder is kind of a pain and then you get it on your show clothes, but kind of the same rule with that one. You want to make sure it's worked into the hair and the skin pretty well. So when you touch it, it doesn't come off. Okay. All right. When it comes to clipping your pig, luckily, I think pigs are way easier to clip than shearing lambs, steers, any of those. You can get super fancy with it if you want. So you can see this graphic that I have over here. This is kind of what all the really high-end showers use. Or you can just kind of keep it simple, generally clip them all the way around. Biggest thing I think is on these clipper guards, it always tells you how long it's going to be over here in the corner. So this one says 1/2 inch. So if you notice over here, so they say ears face right underneath the belly, you should have about 1/8 of an inch of hair. Most of the time, clippers don't need a guard to do 1/8 of an inch, but make sure with the right clipper blades, okay? The neck, you want it to be about 3/8 of an inch. Right here on the shoulders, you want to blend it. So they say about 3/4 of an inch. Don't cut their legs. It's really difficult, and they've at least noticed that. And then the body, you want it to be about 1.25 inches, okay? And that kind of leaves most of their hair. It just kind of trims it down and makes it look a lot nicer, okay? One of the biggest mistakes I've seen is somebody went in and they used 1/8 of an inch all over the body of the pig, okay? Don't do that. The packers actually get really mad when you do that because it makes it a lot harder to process the pigs, okay? So you want to leave it longer. Don't cut it super short, okay? When I was showing, this has at least changed a lot. We used to do just 1/2 inch all the way across the body. Now they're starting to get fancier with it. And sometimes as you do it, you can kind of accentuate their muscles a little bit better as you do it, okay? It takes practice. All right, when it comes to showmanship, I'm not going to go super in depth in showmanship just because we're going to do some showmanship clinics later on, okay? But you want to avoid allowing your hog to root around in the dirt, especially when you're working with them at home, because if you let them do that at home, they're going to do that in the show ring. And then they're going to have sawdust everywhere. They're going to have a blast in the show ring because they love rooting around, okay? You want to make sure you use your driving tool properly. You don't want to overuse it, but you don't want to underuse it. There's a lot of kids that get really frustrated and they start pushing the pigs around with their knees. Try not to do that. You want to use that driving tool as much as you can, okay? Keep the animal between you and the judge at all times. Your hog shouldn't run, but if it does get in that show ring, like some of them do, they walk through that gate, they get super excited, they take off running across the ring. Don't run after them. Just calmly walk over to them and then start showing, okay? We don't have to worry about this too much just because we have air-conditioned buildings and they don't get hot and irritated, but you want to try and keep your pig from fighting with other pigs. That's why we have the guys in the ring to kind of help with that if it does happen. But try and keep it, if you notice it getting irritated with another pig, try your best to keep it away from that other pig, okay? Every time the judge touches your pig, grab your brush and you're going to reposition the hair and then put the brush back in your pocket, okay? Sometimes they'll mess it up just to see if you're going to pull that brush out of your pocket and fix it, okay? So always brush it back down in the direction that the hair goes and then put that brush back, okay? And then be prepared to answer questions about the animal. So what you've been feeding, kind of how you trained it, and then the swine industry, okay? So study up on as many things about hogs as you can, okay? Because you might get questions. When it comes to juniors, they kind of get asked more questions just about the animal. And then it gets harder as you go intermediate and senior, okay? So study up the best that you can. One of the questions I see asked the most is about these ear notches, okay? So our ear notches on the left side is our pig number. So what number it was born in the litter, okay? And then our right ear is the litter number. Some people, they have so many hogs, they have 81 different litters of hogs. So you can see 81 up here. One of the biggest things is like if it needs to be 2 notches down here, so we're doing a number 2, they will have 2 notches. So kind of portioning out that ear so you know where those ear notches are supposed to be is the best part, okay? So I want you guys to figure this one out. So this is our litter number, and this is our pig number. Okay. So what is the litter number of this pig? And what is the pig number?
Is the pig number 134?
So you're going to add them together.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So we have 3 plus 3 plus 1. So we should have 7 on our hog number.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Does that make more sense? So what is our litter
Yeah.
number over here? Make you do more math.
Is it 34?
Yep. It's 34. Okay. So if notice how this side right here, it's not on the very tip. So it's not 81, but right here, it's still in that 3 area. So 3 and 3. Okay. So when you guys get your pigs, if they have ear notches, I would make sure you figure out the litter number and the pig number just in case you get asked that question. Okay. And luckily, it's going to be the same on your pig the whole year. So when the judge goes to ask you, you can already have it figured out. Okay. All right. That is my whole presentation that I have for you guys. I do want to show you another resource that we have with Extension. That's kind of a cool resource. So let me share that screen. So we have on our website, can you guys see that one? The livestock weight calculators. Okay. So what I did is I just Googled USU livestock weight, and this is what it popped up with. Okay. So we'll go to our hogs, but this helps you so you can predict your fair weight, and then it helps you break down your average daily gain of your pig. Okay. So if you know the current weight and then how many days till the fair, and we're guessing usually your pig is going to gain about 2 pounds a day, it's going to predict your weight for the fair. So you can figure out if your pig's going to make weight or not. Okay. Over here on the average daily gain, this makes it easier. You can put in your current weight, what your beginning weight was, and then how many days it's been since you weighed that beginning weight to that current weight, and it'll tell you how many pounds that pig is gaining a day. Okay. I would utilize this if you need to. Works really well. And then you don't have to do as much math because math isn't so fun. Okay. What questions do you guys have for me, or do you have any?